The portrait in Shirley's hands brought tears to her eyes. She stared at the damaged beauty and couldn't help but regret that she had never met Donald. She hated herself the most for marrying him, but she had no one to blame. Not him, not herself, and not her gift. Ultimately, she cursed when she met him at the art school in her first year. Shirley won the award for the best creative student in high school. She thrived on the popularity of her paintings in the school library. The students, teachers, and anyone who showed up in the library didn't hesitate to profess their love for at least one of them. Shirley decided from the beginning to study in a school of arts. With the help of her mother, she discovered her heaven-given talent at an early age and practiced as much as possible. Her mother taught her about how important it was to master the art for 10,000 hours as soon as she could. She was one of the best students when she entered the only art school in the small city. But that didn't deter the time she used to paint and practice to create timeless beauty. One would think her enthusiasm for art would stop her from dating. Of course, it did. She didn't date throughout high school and thought it would be the same in art school. The appearance of Donald shattered her thoughts and imagination. Donald, an art student and 2 years her senior, showed interest in her. Meeting Donald posed a new sort of challenge for Shirley. All of her life, she never had to deal with the probing emotions that caused young girls to have crushes. She wanted to hit the 10,000-hour mark of practice that occupied her growing moments. But since she hit and passed the mark, just before being admitted to the art school, her heart allowed space for other things. The first other thing was Donald. He was her first crush. Donald started with the show of a bit of care. He checked on her when there were assignments and kept her company while she did her painting. At first, she thought him jobless. She was doing nothing but poking into the business of others. Others being her. She wondered if he didn't have projects like the rest, but soon learned that he was a star in his capacity, a sculptor that the others longed to be like. It wasn't long before Shirley joined the queue of those who wanted to be like him. Who didn't want to be like a guy dedicated to working but still found time to rendezvous and meander around the school with the woman he liked? Shirley didn't have to ask him to know he liked her. On his first visit to her class, he told her that he wanted her and would love to be more than friends. Although Shirley was irked by the first encounter, the more he bugged her, the more she liked him. Her focus shifted until she had a crush on him. Concentrating on her work became difficult. She couldn't finish a piece if Donald didn't show up or pass comments. She didn't feel complete even after knowing she was the best if Donald didn't compliment her work or give a piece of advice here and there. At the end of her first year, Shirley needed no one to tell her. In the heart of their hearts, she knew she was done for. But to help herself, she decided to make her feelings known. Donald, after all, was her new challenge. Since Donald reciprocated her feelings, he didn't hesitate to ask her out after she confessed. She didn't hesitate to respond either. They soon became the envy of the School of Arts. The couple every couple modeled. Shirley was glad to be a muse in her art and relationship. Being a talent in every sphere didn't happen quickly for everyone. But with her excellent skills and the occupant of her heart, Donald, she hit the jackpot without much effort. Shirley loved that Donald shared a lot in common with her. He didn't like disturbance with his work of art, just like she didn't. But two of them found a compromise and discovered a workspace that housed them simultaneously, giving enough room for privacy. The only time they weren't together fell into the category of classes they didn't share was when Donald got into the School of Arts 2 years before Shirley. Donald spent his last year convincing Shirley of how much he loved her. Shirley was so proud that when she chose to love, she chose the right person. On the day of his graduation, he proposed. It shocked Shirley, although her yes came out as a scream that shook the entire school for days. The school didn't recover until she did. She had no idea what it meant to get married, but she remembered that her mom was disappointed to hear that she got engaged to a man while in school, and when she still had a lot of years ahead of her. Her mother grew adamant and disapproved of the marriage. Shirley tried to convince her mother of the reasonable person she saw in Donald. She told her mother that Donald thrived as a creative sculptor and would dream with her the way her mother had always done. Shirley couldn't tell if her mother was convinced, but her mother didn't repeat a word. 10 years later, Shirley wished she had listened to her mother and didn't stay so adamant about Donald being a good person. Donald remained a puzzle to Shirley, married for 10 years, and she couldn't tell the kind of person he was or how his mind worked. She wished she had noticed all those red flags before agreeing to marry him. But just like people say, love is blind. Shirley married Donald a year after she graduated from the School of Arts. She would have married him earlier, but some organization sponsored Shirley on a trip to a big city that people recognized as the world of arts. She spent over 6 months in the town on a large project that landed her first contract. Her mother was elated by the news. But Donald? She couldn't tell. She thought it boiled down to the things he experienced as a sculptor in the world. Things didn't seem to be going his way. Donald made an excellent sculptor, one of the best, and Shirley agreed. But Shirley didn't understand how he didn't find his big break in the world. It scared her to the core. But after being sent on that trip by that organization, she knew that something like that would never happen to her. However, the irony that laid upon her heart was how to help Donald. She resolved to marry him as soon as she finished her trip and project. Donald received her with open arms when she got back. She knew without a doubt he was glad to see her. Better still, he had landed a project and seemed to be making some good money a few weeks before her arrival. That made it all well and good. Shirley started as one of the painters in the organization that gave her the project, and the two planned their wedding in less than 3 months. They got married, and life seemed happier. Two creatives, happily married and made excellent money. Shirley could remember that in those times, Donald wore the most comfortable of smiles, and joy reigned in their home. Until Shirley's first pregnancy. The person who didn't accept the new development well wasn't Shirley, as usual, but Donald. The news seemed to tick him off. Shirley could tell from how he reacted to the news when she told him. He didn't accept it in good grace, but he didn't turn it off either. Shirley had supposed she had done something wrong and thought about the best way to apologize to him. But before she could get herself in order and plan her apology, Donald apologized. He returned a few days later with flowers and various gifts. He told her that when she told him about their expectations some days ago, he had a bad week at work and didn't think it was right to have a child yet. The phrase is gone, babe. I'm sorry I acted that way. I am ready for our child, he said and kissed her. She rejoiced that his rejection didn't stem from Donald being tired of their relationship. However, a new worry found its way to her heart. She made some findings and realized that the lousy week Donald experienced in the office wasn't ordinary. Some clients rejected his work and gave bad reviews. Those things must have hurt him. She knew it would hurt her too if that kind of thing happened to her. She decided to be extra careful and delicate when it came to Donald. If life were hard for him at work, she would be his best support in the house. But all that resolve soon came crashing when Donald's work received yet another rejection. No matter what I do, they don't like it. I'm doing my best, doing all the research I can, and ensuring that I deliver nothing of less quality to them. Why? Why are they not accepting it? Donald vented his anger towards her when she asked how his day went at dinner one night. The same continued for days. He lost his joy and didn't support Shirley in anything. Before that day, he followed her on all antenatal visits to the hospital. But after that, Shirley didn't set her eyes on him. He drew back from her when she lost her first pregnancy to a miscarriage. Donald didn't comfort her. Although he apologized a few weeks later, it meant nothing to Shirley, especially when he ended the apology with a silly line. He was telling Shirley that they should put a hold on giving birth to a child. Those were one of the things that puzzled her. Why didn't he want a child? She didn't give him a response that day or any day after. Not that she would have had time to. Her organization sent her on another trip, one that was supposed to last only 3 months. He grew bitter and disapproved of the trip when she told Donald about it. You're supposed to be at home, recuperating and building your hormones to prepare for another child, not traveling. His voice came out thick with venom, the kind Shirley had never heard. Her head spun at his remark for her to prepare her body for another child. Didn't you ask us to put a hold on childbearing? Why are you bringing that up now? She spat at him, but he pounced on her. He didn't hit her, but the heaviness of his body caused her to collapse. She woke up in the hospital a few hours later. She heard from one of the nurses that her husband reported that she fainted, and he found her on the floor. She didn't rewrite the story her husband painted, but she went from the hospital to the city her organization sent her to. She didn't call or reach out to Donald for the 3 months she spent there, but he called her several times before he stopped. Shirley came back from her trip to meet an even messed up Donald. She wondered if he was the same man she fell for in her first year at the art school. He apologized for treating her like he did and promised never to act that way again. He promised to be supportive, to allow her to grow and do all the things she wanted to. He promised to be by her side until the city crowned her the best creation of the year. She should have known that he made empty promises. Donald envied the position of the best creator of the year since he started his journey as a paid sculptor. Shirley should have known that he would never genuinely give her something he wanted so badly, but her joy knew no bounds when he made the promise. She moved in with him again and hoped they would soon become model couples again. They did, but it was all thanks to Shirley, and Donald hated it. Shirley could tell from the way he became grumpy again. After a while, he stopped following her to opening nights and galleries. In one night, he transitioned from being 100% supportive straight to zero. He got worse, and it reached its peak when Donald got fired. Shirley tried to find his reason, but he wasn't forthcoming. He withdrew to himself and slept in a different room. The iota of hope that existed in the atmosphere between the two of them shattered when Shirley got the award for the best creation of the year. The distinction with a family trip to the big city that Shirley frequented. Shirley got excited about the trip because she could take Donald with her for the first time since she traveled. It didn't matter that he didn't follow her to the award party to mount the stage as her date as she received the award. She only wanted to get things back on track with Donald. But she received the shock of her life when she got back home. Not only her galleries stood in shambles, but her lifelong paintings also made no meaning in the shattered pieces on the ground. "What happened?" she asked Donald, whose face scared her to death. Her voice shook from the tears that threatened to pour out of her eyes moments away. "What happened to my paintings?" she asked again. "I took care of them, Shirley," he said, and her heart broke again. She didn't know how to respond or what to say. The ongoing projects she had were among the paintings in her gallery. She stepped into the room, and her heart evaporated. "Why did you do this, Donald?" She bent down and picked up piece after piece. "You know how precious they are to me." The tears started to flow. Her cheeks flushed, and she sniffed. "Why did you do this?" She screamed, stood up, and threw a piece at Donald's face. "Because you did the same thing," he shouted back. "You took the one thing I have ever wanted all my life. I wouldn't have been this hurt if it was anyone else, Shirley. But you knew. You knew I wanted to be the city's best creative of the year. You know I have chased that title my whole life. But you went ahead and took it from me. It's only right that I repay the favor." "But Donald," she whispered, "you said you would support me until I got the award." "You should stop painting, Shirley. That's the only way you can repair what is between us. Stop painting. Leave the creative world." Donald left the room after his last words. Shirley fell in a heap of a teary mess. She spent the rest of the evening picking out whatever she could from the chaos. But the more she searched, the more she cried. She hated Donald more than she loved him. She exited the room some hours later. She left with watery red eyes and puffed up cheeks. She left the house and ran over to her mother's. She couldn't have asked for a better mother. Her mother hugged her and allowed her to pass the night. The following day, Shirley woke up to news about her husband informing the public that she had chosen to retire. Anger replaced the brokenness that lay in her, and she went straight to court to file for a divorce. Her mother clung to her in support. She debunked every idea of her retirement and announced instead that she would be divorcing Donald. She didn't tell the world about the demeaning things he did to her or how much he wanted to take away her dreams. Donald didn't hesitate to show his disappointment. He tried to blackmail her too, but thank goodness she had witnesses and could sail through her divorce easily. She moved the rest of her belongings from his house. She found the portrait she had painted after their marriage on one such trip. The two of them smiled so hard she thought it would tear the material. The picture broke her heart, but she couldn't be broken any further. She left. With her first marriage, Shirley learned that marriage didn't warrant all beds of roses, but making the wrong choice could take out all the roses and leave one with thorns. She decided from then not to marry again, and if she ever changed her mind, her first marriage would be a gauge to ensure she played the game right and didn't get herself into a second dose of trouble. The year after her divorce, she got another trip to another big city, one beginner and heavier on art and painting than the previous one. She had the privilege of taking her mother too, and she was glad. The trip lasted a year, and when she returned to town, she heard about how worse things had gotten for her ex-husband. Her art thrived, and she couldn't be happier that she divorced Donald when she did. Else, her dream would have been shattered, and she would have made nothing out of life. She rejoiced in the freedom that came with being single again.